Hi guys, so for this video we are going to talk about the migration. Of course, we are going to define it first and we are going to give you the types of migration, and this report includes also the migration issues in development policy agendas. For this part of this video, we are going to talk about the terminologies or the nominasc omen that we called, or these are the terms or expressions that we use for these people that are changing their place of birth or place of residence. These terminologies are really important for us to have a clear analysis about the migration flows and patterns. So one of the example that I can provide with this would be using the generic term for those people who is moving from another country. So this is the migrants. So technically we have economic migrants and refugees, and these two words has distinct and different meanings, but most of the people use it interchangeably. That leads us to confusion. So it also leads confusion and problem to vulnerable groups and policymakers in one country. Migrants in the first place, economic migrants, these are the people who is moving because they wanted a better life, a better education, or a better work. And some of them are just simply wanted to safely return to their home and reunite with their family. On the other hand, we have the refugees, and these are the people that is really exposed to death threats or direct threats of persecution, and we commonly hear this one when there is an armed conflict. So for them, returning home is very, very dangerous, and they need a sanctuary elsewhere. So one of the example of this that has a strict policy about it would be the US or the States and the Middle East. So lastly, we have the ecological or environmental migrants. So this term entered the literature in 1980s, and this can be defined as those people who is moving because of the changes in their environment, or they are moving because they have a new phenomenon that they are encountering in their country. So, in conclusion, using the terminologies correctly in migrants is really important because they have different meanings, and it is very important as well to the governments.
Migrants, in the first place economic migrants, choose to move mainly to improve their lives by finding work, education, or because of family reunion, or other reasons, and they can safely return home. A person who travels from one country or area to another to improve their standards of living. Economic migrants.
Refugees are exposed to direct threat of persecution or death, usually fleeing armed conflicts. Returning home for them is too dangerous and they need sanctuary elsewhere. They cross national borders to seek safety in nearby countries and thus become internationally recognized as refugees, protected in international law. The 1951 Refugees Convention and its 1967 Protocol, as well as other documents, such as the 1969 Refugees Convention, remain the cornerstone of modern refugees protection.
Ecological or environmental migrants are discovered issues since they entered the literature in 1980s. Nonetheless, movement of people as a result of changes in the environment is not a new phenomenon. Since people have been moving in response to changes in their environment for centuries, but in the last decades, the international community has begun to recognize the wider linkage and implication that a changing climate and environment has on human mobility. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in 1990 pointed out that the changes in the environment could be the greatest single impact on human migration in the future. IOM 2009, Habanovic, and Milichik 2015. Distinction between the types of migration is extremely important, especially for the governments. Countries deal countries deal with migrants under their own immigration laws and processes with refugees through norms of refugee protection and asylum that are defined in both national legislation and international law. But economic migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, smuggled person victims of trafficking, environmental migrants, unaccom- unaccompanied minors travel internationally frequently in a regular manner, increasingly make use of the same routes and means of transport to get to their destination. Because of that often, it is very difficult to distinguish certain types of immigration due to variety of migration flows and their complexity. The International Organization suggests that use of the term mixed migration as a complex, relatively new term which is used to describe contemporary migratory movements. UNHCR 2013. The principal characteristics of mixed migration flows include the irregular nature and the multiplicity of factors driving such movements, and the differentiated needs and profiles of the persons involved. IOM 2018. As a mixed migrants are also include stranded migrants and stateless persons.
Good day, everyone. My name is Casey A. Mendoza, and today I will discuss the global importance of migration for development. Like what Mr. Joseph Days, the President of 65th Session of the United Nations General Assembly, he said that we must guard against the adoption of protectionist and isolationist policies. History has shown us the cost of those. We must make sure that we guarantee the rights of migrants and assure them of decent lives of working conditions. And yes, we need to prioritize the rights of migrants for them to have a stable lives in a good working condition for the goal. Mr. Days opened the informal thematic debate on international migration and development. The approximately of 214 million people or 3% of world's population that currently living outside the country under their origins of country. We currently live in age of mobility and technology that we used to manage time in human history. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon looking for the garner of positives of global migration for the global good. We need the migration to transfer the manpower and also to improve their skills that we will provide the needs of knowledge and a good step for global growth. Global migration raise issues in order to address that necessary to improve international coordination. The chairperson of Committee on the Protection of Rights, Mr. Abdelhamid El Jamri, of migrant workers of members of their families explained and said that we need to examine issues faced by migrants in order to help in other countries in order to help in countries to countries. These words of their voice raised and thought that it is need to fix the problem by examining the issues just to help countries over the world. Thank you.
The relatively permanent movement of people across territorial boundaries is referred to in-migration and out-migration, or immigration and emigration. It is when the boundaries crossed are international. The place of in-migration or immigration is called the receiver population, while the place out of migration is called the sender population. There are two basic types of migration, the internal migration and international migration. When we say internal migration, it refers to a change of residency within national boundaries, such as states, cities, or provinces. While international migration, refers to a change of residency over national boundaries.
There are two major types of migration, the internal and international migration. In international migration, there are following classifications, and one of them is forced migration, that was denoted by J. Weinstein and Vijayanka Pillai in the year 2001. It is said forced migration happens when a person is moved against their will, just like a slave. Example of this are the first Africans who were forcibly taken to the America from the coast of West Africa at the beginning of 16th century. Also, forced migration exists when the move is initiated because of external factors such as natural disasters and civil war. Example of this is the 7.0 magnitude earthquake that hit the capital city of Haiti. This drove hundreds of thousands of families from their home, and a deadly civil war in Syria that, according to Oxford University's Refugee Studies Center, it caused almost 11 million instances of forced migration. In addition, according to International Organization for Migration in the year 2017, forced migration is a migratory movement in which an element of coercion exists, and it refers to the movement of refugees and internally displaced people. There are many causes of displacement. Some of the more common included conflict-induced displacement. It occurs when people are forced to flee their homes as a result of armed conflict. Next is the development-induced displacement. It happens when people are compelled to move as a result of policies and projects implemented to advance development effort. And disaster-induced displacement. It happens when people are displaced as a result of natural disaster, just like typhoons and floodings and earthquakes and many more.
So, hi guys, I'm here to discuss about new geography of migration flow. First, what is migration flow? Migration flows refers to the number of migrants entering or leaving a given country during a given period of time. Data on migration flows are essential for understanding global migration patterns and how different factors and policies in countries of origin and destination may be related to flows. However, in contrast to migration stats data, estimates on migration inflows and outflows by country, by origin, and destination are not available at the global level. Currently, only 45 countries report migration flows data to the UN. How are migration flows calculated? Countries may calculate migration flows based on information from administrative sources, and also they may use sample survey data. So guys, may makikita kayong table dyan ng international migration at mid-year. So yung nakalagay dyan sa table, world, developed regions, developing regions, least developed regions. Simula siya ng 1990 to 2015. And according to the UN dataset, there is a significant increase in migration flows from 1990 to 2015 in the first place in developed regions. The number of migrants has been doubled from 25 years from 80 to 140 million migrants. The number of international migrants in developing countries increased in the same period for around 70%. The annual increase in the number of international migrants estimated 5 to 10 million, which represents of annual growth of total population. And if we look back to the period between 1965 to 1975, the number of international migrants is nag-increase and pati yung sa total population niya nag-increase. But the situation changed in the 1980s with the declining world population growth rate. From this period, the growth rate of migrants 2.5 annually is higher than growth rate of total population. During the 1990, the global migrant ay tumaas at umabot siya sa average na 2 million migrants per year. Pero noong unang dekada, yung global migrant stock ay dumoble at umabot siya sa about 4.6 million migrant annually. Since 2010, yung migrant stock ay bumaba ng 3.6 million migrants annually because of the global economic and the financial crisis. Migration is an important force in development and high priority issues for both developing and developed countries. Reality is indeed much more complex. Between 2000 and 2010, the average annual growth rate for the migrant stock in the South was 2.5 per annum. And then, yung sa North naman was around 2.3%. Since 2010, yung annual growth niya bumaba ng 1.8% in the developing region and 1.5% in the developed regions. South-South migration flows continued compared to the South-North movement. So, ang pinopoint out dito, the Global South could be higher if more accurate data were available. And the most attractive continents for migrants is Europe, with 76 million migrants, or 1.3% of the total number of international migrants. International migration within countries is also on the rise in the last 15 years, for 41% from 1 out of every 30 person living abroad in 2000 to 35% in 2015. More than one half of the international migrants live in 10 countries of the world. United States of America ang may pinakamalaking number ng international migration, followed by Russian Federation, Germany, Saudi Arabia, and so on. And the countries with the lowest percentage of international migrants are represented by India, Indonesia, Myanmar, Philippines, and China, together with some EU countries such as Bulgaria, Slovakia, and Poland. One of the most important and the most discussed items considering migration are remittances, money that migrants send back to their countries of origin. And next, migration issues in development policy agendas. Reliable information on migrants and migration is essential to develop evidence-based policies to inform public opinion and to combat widely held misconceptions. Immigration and asylum are among the key issues today, especially in EU, but it is evident that migration policies fail to achieve their declared objectives or have unintended consequences. There has been a modest success until nowadays in preventing unwanted flows and effectively managing mobility. 3 sets of factors are responsible for that. 1. Arising from the social dynamics of the migratory system, linked to the globalization and transnationalism, and factors within political system. Integrating migration into global development policy agendas is taking a new importance in global world, but the coherent and comprehensive integration of international migration in those documents is still lacking. The link between concepts of migration and development was clearly established in the IOM Constitution in 1950. Although this topic is relevant and important as ever, it is essential that some new ground be covered in the course of the current discussion to avoid repetitions and ensure that some progress is achieved. The International Organization for Migration, or IOM, is determined to approach migration issues in a global, orderly, and humane manner. In this respect, it is important to move beyond emergency humanitarian activities. In situations of emergency, the international community is easily mobilized, as was demonstrated recently by the aid extended to the regions of Asia and Africa affected by the tsunami. However, in order to ensure the development process in the long term, it is essential that governments are able to harness the positive aspects of migrations, such as the expertise and experience of migrants, while minimizing the negative effects, in particular brain drain. It is the aim of IOM to make migration an indigenous element of the development strategies of the countries concerned. Economic and social factors are the main reasons why people migrate. In addition, global migration trends are also influential by political instability and conflict. Today, the number of persons forcibly displaced globally is the highest since the aftermath of World War II, with the number of refugees and asylum seekers reaching nearly 26 million. Migration has the potential to make a significant contribution to development. However, coordination and cooperation between host and sources countries are required to establish the most appropriate and effective policies to increase the positive impacts of migration for all concerned. Policies to foster synergies between migration and development in the same country are of equal importance. Successful development policies such as investment projects, improved health services, education, and the promotion of local projects would not only help to alleviate poverty, unemployment, and related social instability in the developing countries, but would also lower incentives for massive immigration.
Migration, economic welfare, and development are migration policies, right? International migration is a hotly debated topic in rich and poor countries. Opinion on the economic desirability of migration flows for both sending and receiving countries vary considerable. The camps are divided on a range of issues, for example, between those who welcome immigration in rich economies as a much needed way of filling the gaps in domestic labor markets, and those who are concerned about its possible negative impact on the local workforce on a congestion. Opinion also differ between those who stress the benefit of international migration on sending countries through remittance, increased trade and investment packages, and those who warn about the negative impact of migration on domestic capacity. At a time when the potential contribution of migration to economic growth, poverty reduction, and welfare is being increasingly scrutinized in both developed and developing countries, it is crucial to examine the real weight of these arguments in order to inform the right evidence-based migration policies. As empirical evidence is slowly starting to emerge, This ODI event aims to present some of the latest thinking of the economic impact of migration on both receiving and sending countries in both developed and developing countries. In the light of such evidence, it's cover evidence related to the current state of migration policies in Europe countries as well as policy stance toward immigration from developing countries and suggests possible policies to maximize the benefit of migration while maximizing its costs. Migration ay isang malaking usapin pagdating sa mga developing and developed countries. Ang opinion ng bawat isa ay may malaking pagkakaiba. Para sa mga developed countries na tumatanggap ng migration, ay nakakatulong ito upang mas mapataas pa ang ekonomiya at ang domestic labor market. Ang negatibong impact naman nito ay ang mapadami ng population. Para sa mga developing countries ay nababawasan population, kahirapan, at dahil na rin sa mga pinapadalang pera, nakakatulong ito upang mas mapataas pa ang ekonomiya ng bansa. Ang negatibong dulot naman nito ay kakulangan sa mga professional at skilled person. Ang paglipat ng isang tao sa isang bansa ay may potential na maaaring makatulong sa ekonomiya ng bansa, kagaya nga nung nagpapadala ng OFW ng pera dito sa Pinas. At isa pa sa mga benepisyo ng paglipat ay nakakabawas ng hirapan sa isang bansa, muunlad man o hindi. Ang ODI or Overseas Developing Institution ay isang organisasyon na makakatulong upang malaman kung ang paglipat ng isang tao sa isang bansa ay nakakatulong o nakakapagbenepisyo ba sa ekonomiya ng bansa. Isa din sa tinitingnan na anggulo ay kung agad na nakakapag-adjust ang isang tao sa napili niyang bansa. Hindi lang dahil maraming opportunities ang dala, ang dapat isaalang-alang pag lumilipat ng bansa. Dapat isipin din ang gastos na maaaring magamit sa paglipat. Top 10 of higher immigrants in 2017. Top 1. Number 1, United States na may 49.8 million. Saudi Arabia, 12.2 million. Number 3, Germany, 12.2 million. 4, Russia, 11.7 million. 5, United Kingdom, 8.8 million. 6, United Arab Emirates, 8.3 million. 7, France, 7.9 million. 8, Canada, 7.9 million. 9, Australia, 7 million. 10, Spain. Ilan kung bakit nagmamigrate ang isang tao. Cultural factors. China, food mining. Political and government factors. North Korea. The government controls all of the movement and living of every citizen in North Korea. Social, for service, lack of education, for medical care. Economic and employment, for pay, hazardous working condition. Mga dahilan kung bakit nagmamigrate ang isang tao dahil sa mga nakikita niyang opportunities sa ibang bansa. Social, plenty of food, available service, lot of doctors. Economic, job opportunities, better quality of life, good pay. Political, democracy, freedoms.
Massimiliano Cali is a trade economist in the World Bank Group Trade and Competitiveness Global Practice. His current and recent work focuses on trade in fragile countries, on the relation between economics and the conflict, and on urbanization. Prior to joining the bank in 2012, he has served as an economic advisor to the Palestinian Ministry of National Economy in Ramallah, as a research fellow with the Overseas Development Institute based in London, Geneva, and Jerusalem, and as an economist with the Italian Embassy to Bolivia in La Paz. In these capacities, He has provided economic policy advice to a number of ministries in developing countries as well as to international organizations, NGOs. He has published in the fields of trade and development, state business relations, migration and urbanization. He holds a PhD in economic geography from London School of Economics and a MA Development Economics from the University of East Aguila.
Tommaso Frattini presented a study he had made for the Law Pay Commission on the labor market impact of immigration in the UK. The main points included, according to British Social Survey, highly educated individuals are less likely to believe that immigration lower wages than those with lower education levels. Consideration of alternative adjustment mechanisms suggests that changes in factor supplies are accommodated by changes in output and technology. Firms may increase the use of unskilled labor by producing goods and services that uses unskilled labor more intensively in reaction to the increase in its supply. There is evidence that immigrants are more educated than natives. However, immigration does not exert pressure on wages of those highly educated because immigrant employment concentrates in the lowest wage occupations. There is a substantial brain waste among migrants in the UK.
Even though we pointed out that migrations are old as human society, today we are faced with the changing migration patterns. New migration forms and types differ from historical ones. That is why a more inclusive approach to migration and especially their ties with development is needed. Of particular importance is increase in understanding of migration issues, advocate for better migration data, and promote the incorporation of migration into national development plans.